Thank you very much for coming out. My name is Mike Schmidt. I'm Mayor of Lebanon Township, and I'd like to welcome our special guest, Congressman Malinowski. We'll ask him to make some comments in a moment. But first, a few comments from me. As many of you know, Lebanon Township, we trace our history back to being established in 1731. We have a very long history as a great place to raise families, partly because of the rural heritage, but also the industrious citizens that have come through Lebanon Township. First off, this morning I'd like to thank the Lebanon Township historians, especially the chairman, Victor Hoffman, and Lori Hoffman as the vice chairman. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, but I'd also like to thank the township staff, including our new staff, all the volunteers who organized today's event, and the historians over the last 50 years who put their hearts and minds into preserving the township's history and this museum. One of those is former Mayor Tom Burrell, who we'll meet in a minute. He had the vision some years ago to start this the initiative for the edition that we have here today. So we're glad to have him here for the ribbon cutting. Today we not only cut the ribbon to open the first edition of the museum since about 1870. That's when the second story was put on, and there's a little addition here. We're finally bringing indoor plumbing to this schoolhouse. The schoolhouse was first built in about 1825. So I'd like to recognize the dedicated service of the previous curators, and introduce in a moment the third curators in the museum's history. The building was abandoned sometime after 1920, I believe. Sometime, and the historian, please correct me if I'm off by a little bit. Gone into disrepair. In about the 1970s, a group of township residents took the task to renovate the building as a museum. The names of many of those dedicated residents are found in the different photo albums around. I'd just like to highlight one. One of the photo albums here contains a younger Congressman, Leonard Lance, along with his twin brother, his father. Wesley Lance was the township attorney for more than 60 years. So as we're here today announcing a new curator, we're passing more than one torch. The first curator in the early 1980s was Dorothea Connolly. She was succeeded some years later by Joan Lucas, who was the curator of this museum for more than 30 years. During that time, she clearly preserved the museum, but also preserved the community down in what is called the New Hampton part of Lebanon Township, but more broadly than just New Hampton. Her first assistant was Kim Jacobus, who's now the township deputy clerk. About 25 years ago, Gina Kenny, who's also here, joined her as
21 years ago.
21 years ago.
That's good, that's good.
She joined her as the assistant curator of this museum. Today's event, you might have seen the theme. Part of the theme is a bread and soup party. That's a tribute to Joan and Gina, who would have every December a winter party with soup and bread. We weren't able to have it this December because of the construction going on, so that's part of the theme for today's event as a tribute to them. With that, let me now officially introduce the third curator of the museum, Gina Sampaio, our associate curator, Bill Honichevsky. Both of them have very distinguished credentials, not only as historians, but as active members of the community. And let me turn it over now to...
Some of the things that I was going to say, but I wrote mine first. I just want you guys to know. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for coming here. And if we haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Gina Sampaio, and I'm proud to follow in the footsteps of Dorothea Connolly and Joan Lucas as the next curator of the Lebanon Township Museum. One of the things that I love about walking into historic buildings like this is that I get to step back in time. So when I walk through those doors and stand inside these four walls, I can imagine what it was like for Mr. Beatles and Mr. Cannell, the first headmasters of New Hampton Public School number 8 when the doors first opened in the 1820s. I can imagine the rows of desks filled with children working on their slate boards, children like Ike Sharp, who painted a picture of flowers for his sister Mary, who was the teacher in 1909. But it almost doesn't seem fair to me sometimes that we get to know so much about them, and they never got to learn anything about us. I'm sure they would never believe that one day their beloved schoolhouse would close and then fall into such a state of disrepair. Nor could they have imagined that such a dedicated group of individual citizens would rally together to save the building. Those citizens who became the Squires Point historians and the Historians Committee, many of whom are here today, have worked for decades to save, preserve, maintain, and improve the museum. And their dedication has turned the schoolhouse once again into a place where children and community members come together to learn and to play. One of the volunteers, former mayor and active historian Tom Burrell, has fought and strove to keep the museum a vital part of the township, and I'm personally grateful that he had the vision to bring running water and indoor plumbing to us. Thanks to the long-term efforts of so many volunteers and the steadfast support of the mayor and the township committee, that is now a reality, just in time. Over the years, many local people have donated items to display at the museum, for which I'm grateful. I'm sure that the farmers, mill workers, and shopkeepers who sent their children here would find it quite comical that the people of the future would find their mundane objects like clothes, books, tools, and housewares so fascinating. And I'm positive that they would never believe that an accomplished congressman would come to a party at their little country schoolhouse. They might be pretty fascinated themselves to find out that an immigrant like some of them could go on to become a Rhodes Scholar and work with secretaries of states and presidents, and serve himself as the chief advocate for the Human Rights Watch, as well as the Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. By joining us here today, Congressman Malinowski demonstrates that he agrees with me that Lebanon Township and the people that live here are important. And by you all being here today, that shows that you also agree with me that we can learn from the people who lived here before us, that history matters and community matters. I hope you get a chance to talk with me or my assistant, Bill Homshevsky, who I'm honored to work with here, and let us know your ideas for continuing to grow and improve the museum. Please be sure to sign our guest book, which is out in the vestibule. Sign up to be on our email list. We have a craft corner if you'd like to make a retirement card for Joan and Deanna. We have a selfie station, which I know you're all really wildly excited about. And of course, we have plenty of food and drinks. So now I'd like to hand it over to Congressman Miller.
Thank you so much for those wonderful words. We're here for many reasons. We're here to thank Gina and Joan for all of the amazing work they have done over the years to keep history alive for the members of this community. We're here to thank you guys for carrying on that incredibly important work, and to the mayor for his support for this treasure, for not just this community, but for the county and for New Jersey. I'm really happy to be here because, well, partly I'm a history buff. When I was campaigning around the district last year, I didn't have much time for reading. About the only book that I had time for on Audible in my car as I went from event to event was the wonderful recent biography of General Grant. And I read that for the reason I read a lot of history. It gives me perspective on our past and our present. It reminds me that whatever challenges we think we're facing right now, they're nothing compared to the challenges that our ancestors overcame. Then I got elected. I still don't have a lot of time to read, but one of my big projects right now, our project, is to build some infrastructure for the state of New Jersey, including that tunnel that we all need running into New York City. And so the one book I went out and got myself was an amazingly interesting history of the building of the current tunnel and what it was like for our ancestors of 100 years ago to build all of these amazing architectural marvels that are now crumbling, but were unbelievably new and modern in their time, to learn from the challenges that they faced. Now that's national history, but I've always thought that local history is particularly important. I was a kid growing up in New Jersey, and we'd go on field trips to places just like this. I don't think we came. I lived in Princeton as a kid. I don't think we came this far north, but I remember a lot of one-room schoolhouses and stone houses where George Washington slept for a night. And yes, sometimes I wasn't paying attention. Sometimes I was rolling my eyes, but it did stick with me, and I was really fascinated as a kid. Exactly what you were talking about, trying to imagine what regular life was like not, you know, what papers did George Washington sign and what bill did the Continental Congress agree to, but what it was actually like to live, to bring up kids, to go to school, to farm, to work, to build industry on a daily basis for people. And imagining that was always something that was fascinating for me. And a place like this enables kids to do that, much more than any book or anything else that they can learn about in the classroom. And when we do that, I think it does something very profound for us, because it reminds us of something we all have in common. I work in a place right now where people are divided, right? And you may have read about it. And it is so valuable for all of us, especially people in my line of work today, to be reminded of the history that all of us as Americans have in common. The lives that our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents lived in communities that they shared, where they did the same things and they faced the same challenges, and they basically had the same values, even if some of them voted for Abe Lincoln and some of them voted for whoever it was, McClellan, right? He ran against Douglas the first time around, yeah. And that's perspective that we really, really need right now. And I can report to you that for all that you read in the news, we are finding common ground on some things when it comes to protecting our Constitution, protecting our country when it's under threat. I can always walk over to the other side of the aisle in the House of Representatives and talk about values like decency and patriotism and responsibility, and find common ground with people, even if we're not going to agree on every policy issue, which is fine too, because we're there to sometimes to disagree, because out of that disagreement, the best ideas sometimes emerge. And so I think local history is one of the things that grounds us in that shared sense of community that allows us to then get along on the bigger issues that sometimes drive us apart. So I will continue to come here. I will continue to try to learn about what came before us in this community. I'm looking at that map because when I got into my new office in the Cannon office building in the House of Representatives, which, by the way, interestingly, was Congressman Lance's office 4 or 6 years ago. Totally random. I chose the same. See, we have something. So maybe not random. Something mystical that binds us in Lebanon County. But you know, we had a bare office. I needed to decorate it, and so I went to the Library of Congress, which is my library. Isn't that cool? And I asked them for old maps of our district, and so we got a map. We have an old map of Somerset County, of Morris County, and I believe the old map they found for me of Hunterdon County is that map. And I need to go back. I'm going to take a picture of it. I'm going to check. Ours is not the original. I think you guys have the original. But that's really, really neat. So I'm already fascinated. Would love to meet more of you, and obviously, anytime you need anything from your representative, please come and see us. From the smallest thing to the largest national issue, my job is to represent you as best as I possibly can. So reach out, let us know how we're doing, and I look forward to meeting everybody here I haven't already met. Thank you very much.